As a reporter, I've traveled the Middle East for many years. It's an area that has always fascinated me, but in my work, I've mainly covered its war zones, its crises, and its tragedies. This journey, which takes me down the Silk Road in the footsteps of Marco Polo, gives me the opportunity of exploring the great historical and cultural significance of this part of the world, its ancient melting pot of peoples and civilizations that have contributed so much to our own. Asia Minor, or Little Asia, as it was called by the Romans, was for the Turks Anatolia, which literally means the place of the rising sun. In other words, the East, which is where Marco Polo and the other traders on the Silk Road were headed. Several of the biggest caravanserais to be found along our routes, approximately 12,000 kilometers, are in Anatolia. For example, the 13th century Sultan Hani Caravanserai, built by the Seljuq Turks in the province of Cappadocia, right in the middle of the country. Since caravans were a valuable source of income, the Seljuq Turks did everything they could to incite traveling merchants to take their portion of the Silk Road across Anatolia. One way they did this was to offer them 3 days in a row of free lodging in caravanserais like this one. They even went as far as to set up an insurance system. If a merchant had his goods stolen along a certain segment, or if one of his animals died, he was reimbursed for the goods or for the animal. Originally from Central Asia, the Turkish Seljuk Sultans ruled over a large part of Persia and then Asia Minor up until the 12th century. They were former nomads who became masters of an empire, and they learned the importance of trade from the Iranians. Measuring a total of 4,500 square meters, the Sultan Hani Caravanserai was built by El Dimaski, a Syrian architect. The use of groin vaults and rib vaults shows the influence of Western architecture in this area throughout the period of the Crusades. Although vulnerable to invasion, Cappadocia was also a region where routes and empires converged, a major crossroads for the civilizations of the ancient world. Lying right in the middle of Anatolia, north of the Taurus Mountains, the region of Cappadocia had a strategic location on the caravan route that linked the Mediterranean to the east. This region was first controlled by the Hittites, then by the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, before it was sacked by the Mongol warriors and then annexed by the Ottoman Turks. Considered one of the most beautiful regions in Turkey, Cappadocia continues to attract hordes of tourists, who come in particular to visit its stunning rock formations called fairy chimneys, which are situated around the village of Göreme. Tatlum, a small Arabian thoroughbred mare, provides a great way to explore the maze of chimneys, which were created from very friable sedimentary rock deposits as a result of erosion by wind, rain and frost. From time immemorial, the inhabitants of the region have used the area's unique geology to create cave dwellings. These naturally carved or man-made excavations also house some of the oldest churches in the world. After being forgotten for centuries, or else turned into stables, hundreds of rock-cut churches were rediscovered in the 1950s by a French Jesuit priest named Guillaume de Gerfagnan. The priest's successors have created an association called the Friends of Cappadocia, which is overseen by Ahmet Diller. How are these strange rock formations connected to the many churches found in the valley of Göreme?
We might say that Cappadocia combines the work of nature and the work of human beings. It is even said that the Hittites dug and used parts of the underground cities. So it goes very, very far back. Some cave dwellings in the area were used by the Zoroastrians.
the fire worshippers who came from Iran.
The fire worshippers, that's right. The Persians came here and they even gave the region its name, Cappadocia. In ancient Persian, Cappadocia means the land of beautiful horses.
The Zoroastrians, the Medes, the Hittites, and then?
Then the churches. The first Christians settled here and started digging. At first, the chapels were quite small. The ceilings in the beginning were flat, with crosses carved into them because there was a real cult associated with the cross. Later on, the Christians added the paintings, barrel-vaulted structures and frescoes that we find in many of the churches in Cappadocia.
This is such a strange place, such a strange setting to find monasteries and houses. Was there also a defensive or secretive aspect to it?
The hermits were the first Christians to come here. They lived in seclusion in the Cappadocian cones, called fairy chimneys. Below they had a little chapel. Their sleeping quarters were above, and around it a vineyard. Later, the Cappadocian fathers would try to group the secluded hermits together in order to found a cenobitic community.
Cenobitic, derived from the ancient Greek words koinos and bios, means life in common. The cenobitic rules are basically the rules that regulate monastery life. This type of monastic organization originated in the East and spread to Europe in the Middle Ages. Why did the hermits and then the monks choose such bizarre locations to build their cells or monasteries, for example, with the doors situated 10 meters above the ground?
The purpose was in fact to conceal themselves because the area was often invaded, often raided by the Arabs. So they made narrow tunnels leading to the sleeping quarters or the chapel, which could then be blocked off with a millstone or another object. Since the valleys in Cappadocia are quite steep, they could seclude themselves, as well as congregate in the monasteries or the churches in Goremi.
The area containing the most beautiful rock churches of Goremi has been turned into a national park and is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. An entire monastery and a nun's convent are concealed among the cliffs. In addition to the churches and monks' cells, other highlights include this refectory with its table and benches sculpted into the rock. Built into the limestone and then painted, this magnificent fresco dating from the 11th century depicts various scenes from the Bible. In the apse, we see the figure of the Archangel Michael holding the orb of the earth in the form of a ball decorated with a little cross. This is a symbol of power, similar to the orbs that Charlemagne or the Byzantine emperors often hold in their hands. Can we also find traces of how Cappadocian culture and customs might have traveled up and down the Silk Road?
There are geometric patterns in the architecture of the churches that are also found on the fronts of houses. We can see the same pattern in the kilims, carpets that are flat woven, a weaving method that has been used since time immemorial.
If Ahmet brings up kilims, it's not by chance. When he's not looking after old churches, Ahmet is in fact selling Cappadocian carpets. He comes from a family of weavers and has become a specialist in the history of the designs found in the carpets. Ahmet, can we say that carpets, and in particular the kilim, originated here in Anatolia?
That's right, between Konya and Cappadocia, in the Neolithic site of Seljuq.
So about how long ago?
6,500 BC.
So could the kilim possibly be the oldest kind of carpet we know?
It's the oldest form of weaving.
And in terms of the motifs on the kilims, did they spread to other places along the Silk Road? For example, are there traditional designs from this area that for some unknown reason pop up hundreds or thousands of kilometers away from here?
Human instinct and weaving methods create certain forms.
Forms that reappear, as in Plato.
Certain forms that reappear that may be found in Africa, in South America, or in Anatolia.
People spontaneously come up with the same forms.
Sometimes, yes, the same forms.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they also have a meaning. If we're talking about kilims, for instance, there are 3 recurring themes that we see all the time. First of all, female fertility, which is associated with a motif called hands on the hips. In Turkish, we say eli belinde. It's a geometrical form that suggests a head and a body with the hands bent. A second motif that we very often find is the ear of wheat, which is related to the theme of the fertility of nature. Another subject of concern for people was protection. Protecting against diseases, bad weather, earthquakes, any sort of disaster that can still occur even today. A typical example of this is the eye motif, which guards against the evil eye, and it's found everywhere in Anatolia. So we also put protective signs on kilims.
These amulets against the evil eye, called Nazar Bonchuk, date back to the early Turkic people, who were originally nomads who roamed the steppe and worshipped Tengri, the god of the blue sky. The heirs to those nomadic ancestors are to be found in the mystical Alevi Bektashi order. A very powerful but generally rather secret community, the Alevi are thought to represent nearly 20% of the Turkish population, or at least 15 million people. It was the religious order of the Janissaries, the elite fighting corps of the Ottoman Empire. The Alevi are followers of Ali, the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law, and thus close to the Shia branch of Islam, but they've inherited many shamanic practices and beliefs from the Turkic nomads of the steppes. They don't pray in mosques, but rather in semevi, or houses of assembly, and consider the Christian Bible, the Jewish Torah, and the Book of Psalms as sacred texts, just like the Quran. The spiritual leader of the Alevi is a Sayyid, a descendant of the Prophet, but certain aspects of Buddhism are also incorporated into their beliefs. Their prayer in the form of a dance, the Sema, symbolizes the movements of the universe.
The Sema is a religious dance to music in which the difference between the earth and the sky, matter and spirituality, men and women, disappears. It's a form of religious practice.
You say this ceremony symbolizes equality between the sky and the earth, between men and women. Is that really true among the Alevi and the Bektashi?
The Alevi and Bektashi believe there is no difference between men and women. Everyone has the same status. Of course, within the family structure, women and men have different tasks. They're divided up differently. Our life is collective, but women are not oppressed and not excluded.
Your movement is both a mystical and a socially active movement that leans very much to the left in Turkish politics. How do you reconcile these two extremes?
Perhaps for the first time in the world, at the time of Hasi Bektas Veli, we can say that people experienced collective life, community life, social life, respectively, in the right way. Everyone took what they needed and brought back any surplus. So it was all distributed to the Alevi Bektashi and to people in need around the world. The belief is that salvation cannot be obtained alone. Salvation can only be obtained together. And it's not only for human beings. The Alevi Bektashi believe that respect should be given not only to humans, but also to trees, to all living beings. We do not kill any living thing deliberately. According to our beliefs, we never prune any tree without permission. If we cut down a tree, it is necessary for us to plant another one to take its place.
What's the meaning of the dances you do during the Sema?
We see the Creator in everything, sometimes in the cranes, when we're in a certain state of mind, and the Deyi, the songs, talk about it. There is the flapping of the wings of the cranes. We take 3 steps in the name of God, Muhammad, and Ali. On the path toward God, Muhammad is our guide.
The Alevi have long had the reputation of being a powerful, progressive force in Turkish society, but today they're viewed with suspicion by the governing Islamist party led by Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Rising to the east of the Anatolian plateau are the Caucasus Mountains. At the far end of Anatolia, near the border with present-day Armenia, lies the city of Kars. At 1,700 meters above sea level, in an area populated by the Kurdish people of the mountains, it was for a long time an object of dispute between the Turks and Tsarist Russia. There are still remnants of Russian architecture in the city, as well as former Armenian churches turned into mosques. Prosperous caravans have always gone hand in hand with prosperous empires. In fact, when the Silk Road was at its height in the 1st century, the Roman Empire was at its height in the West, while on the eastern end, the Han Empire was at its height in China. Over the centuries, there was also the Pax Mongolica, during the period of the Mongol Empire, which controlled an entire chunk of Asia. Then there was the Ottoman Empire of the Turks, the largest of all, stretching from Hungary to Mecca, and from Algiers up to here, to Kars, on the border with Persia. But unfortunately for the Turks, when they were ruling over this vast territory, the Europeans found a way to bring back spices from the east by going round Africa by boat. The establishment of the great maritime trade routes at the beginning of the 16th century thus dealt a fatal blow to the Silk Road and caused cosmopolitan cities like Kars to decline and become mere garrison towns. But there are many cultural influences from the Silk Road that persist in Turkish culture. The Turkic peoples originally came from eastern Siberia, not far from China, and their migration routes paralleled those of the Caravans. The venerable Kurdish luthier Salih Sahin still makes most of the instruments that come from Central Asia. The saz, the oud, the zither are stringed instruments from the Silk Road. How did you become a luthier and how did you learn to play the saz?
I learned to play the saz from my father. He became interested in the saz and in folk songs when he was very young. We learned to play music from our father. My teacher was my father.
How do you make a saz? What kind of wood do you use?
In this area, the saz is made from the mulberry tree. The best is carved mulberry. A saz of the highest quality is made from wood that's allowed to age. In other words, after the body of the instrument is finished, you have to wait 3 or 4 years before moving on to the final phase and being able to play it.
If the saz is typically Anatolian, how did the instruments that are related to it travel down the Silk Road?
The saz comes to us from Central Asia, from countries like Iran, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkmenistan. The city of Kars is the city where it originally came from in Turkey. Then from Kars, our instruments spread to Europe. This is because some 20 civilizations settled in Kars as they moved westward through Turkey. Those civilizations left their culture, their music, and their traditions in our city.
You're a luthier, a musician, and you're also a poet. That's why they call you Sheikh. Where do you get the inspiration for your poems?
When I compose music, the words for folk songs, it's a way for me to keep the culture of our region and the traditions of the past alive.
Is this love poem, Mahalisan, My Doe, about a symbolic woman or a woman who actually exists?
That's a very good question, and I can answer it very easily. Before, according to our customs, men and women could not openly express their feelings. It was a tradition connected with the Silk Road. You couldn't tell the person you loved your feelings. You had to use an intermediary, a go-between. So I use the doe here in place of the person I love. I pretend I'm talking to a doe so that my feelings are not revealed. I'd have been very sad if I had never played the saz. If I were born into the world again, I would play the saz.
It was near Kars that the former kings of Armenia chose to establish their capital in spite of the extremely harsh climate. This windswept steppe takes us to Ani, which lies on the border between Turkey and present-day Armenia. Once a republic of the Soviet Union, Armenia gained its independence in 1991. It's 15 degrees Celsius below zero this morning, and that doesn't stop Hussein, an old Kurdish shepherd, and his Kangal, a guardian dog, trained to fend off the wolves in the area, from going out with the herd. A very large Armenian population once lived everywhere in this region until the genocide of 1915, in which more than 1 million people were killed. At the time, in the middle of World War I, the Turkish regime suspected its Armenian minority of treason and incited the Kurdish tribes of the Caucasus to go after them. Turkey refuses to consider what happened as a genocide, and today relations between Turkey and Armenia are still strained, while the border between the two countries remains closed. The ancient Armenian capital, Ani, is situated just a few meters away from this border. But it lies, by a terrible twist of history, on the Turkish side. Once a bustling market town on the Silk Road, it was ravaged by Tamerlane in the 14th century, and in the end completely abandoned. It stands as a witness to the great kingdom of Armenia. Allied with the Roman Empire, then the Byzantine Empire, then with the Crusaders and the Mongols, Armenia was the first state to officially convert to Christianity at the beginning of the 4th century. The bridge built over the Aksaray River, a river that still serves as the border today, made Ani a very important crossing point on the Silk Road. The Armenians were wealthy merchants and traders. They were also known to be mercenaries hired to protect the caravans, says Turkish art historian Özlem Elbustan, who is part of the conservation program for the city. In its heyday, how many people were there in Ani? How many caravanserais and churches?
In the Middle Ages, in the period around the year 960, we're speaking of a population of close to 100,000 inhabitants. During that time, it's estimated that Ani had a higher population than Istanbul. It was called the City of 1,001 Churches. It was also said at the time that Ani was the world, but the world was not Ani. We now find only one caravanserai here dating from the time of the Seljuqs. In the area, there are about 30 sesame oil making structures and caravanserais with their accommodation spaces.
Why is it that Ani became such an important city?
It was mainly due to the Silk Road Bridge, which was built in the 10th century. This bridge enabled the land route from Asia to cross over into Anatolia. And as a result, the big caravans, as you know, would first come to Ani as a stopover point and lodging place. So because of that, Ani prospered during that period.
What role did the Armenians play with regard to the Silk Road?
The Armenians were not only soldiers, but also merchants and the people of the region who were already living here.
The city was in decline for a long time, but what was the fatal blow that left it empty and in ruins?
It can't be explained by one single thing because the emigration didn't happen all at once. Some of the people left after it was destroyed by Tamerlane, others after the earthquakes. But the main reason was because the land routes were replaced with sea routes. Ani flourished because it was a major trading and commercial center.
If a city loses its importance for trade and commerce, economically speaking, the people have nothing more to do there.
Do you think the past, for example, the history of the Silk Road, can teach us things that are useful for the present?
Of course. History is a light for the future. That is how we must look at history. And as you know, these days, there's now a new agenda for the old Silk Road. In order to give new life to the structures on this road, we're planning to reopen it.
Perched up on the bare and glorious expanse of the steppe, Annie almost seems to have been forgotten. Here, the customs watchtowers outnumber the tourist guards that patrol this spectacular archaeological site where herds of wild horses are still free to roam.